You know those neighborhoods where one person acts like they're the mayor, judge, jury, and executioner of the entire block? Well, welcome to my neighborhood. And the self-appointed ruler of our ranch-style community? That would be Karen. Karen is the head of the HOA, and if she had it her way, no one would breathe without her written permission. She lives directly across the road from our ranch and has a personal vendetta against vehicles parked improperly, even if they're just temporarily stopped on private property. But what Karen didn't know is this. The woman she tried to confront, embarrass, and ultimately citizens arrest over a parked car. That was my wife. And my wife is the county sheriff. Yeah, buckle up. It was a Sunday afternoon, hot, breezy, the kind of day where chores and naps compete for your attention. My wife had just come home from working an extra shift and parked her county-issued SUV at an angle across our extended gravel driveway. It was dusty, but clearly on our land. 10 minutes later, Karen stomps across the road in sandals and fury. I saw her from the kitchen window and thought, oh no, not again. She didn't knock, just started yelling from the gate. That vehicle is violating community parking guidelines. This isn't a mechanic yard. My wife in gym clothes and a ponytail walks out calmly. She's used to confrontation. She's been in law enforcement for over a decade. Karen, however, had no clue who she was dealing with. It's parked on private land, my wife says. City ordinance allows it, and the HOA doesn't govern this side of the easement. Karen pulls out a folder from her canvas tote. I swear she carries those bylaws like a preacher carries a Bible. According to page 6 of the vehicle compliance section, my wife cuts her off. Ma'am, I helped write that ordinance. Karen squints. Excuse me, I'm Sheriff Morales. And just like that, Karen's attitude did not improve. She doubled down. So what does Karen do next? Call the police? Number she tries to detain my wife herself. She shouts, "You're impersonating law enforcement." That's a fake uniform and a fake car. Mind you, the SUV had the sheriff's seal on both sides. My wife had her badge clipped to her belt. Her firearm was holstered, her ID was around her neck. She wasn't in full uniform, but she was still clearly official. Karen lunges forward, tries to block the vehicle, and then announces, I'm placing you under citizen's arrest for illegal parking and impersonation. I ran out at that point. I thought she was going to call in backup from her Facebook group. Karen, step back, I said. You're making a huge mistake. She snapped, you're aiding and abetting a fraud. The HOA will handle this. That's when my wife calmly reached for her radio and said, Dispatch, this is Sheriff Morales. Got an aggressive civilian making false legal threats. Please send a unit. Karen froze. Wait, that was real? Yes, ma'am, it is. And unless you want to be charged with obstruction and attempted assault, I suggest you back up. She backed up all right, but only to her house, and that wasn't the end. 20 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived. Not just any deputies, ones who worked directly under my wife. Their faces said it all. The look they gave Karen was the same one you give someone who tries to microwave foil. Karen tried to backpedal. I didn't know she was the sheriff. She was rude. She was aggressive. One of the deputies shook his head. We reviewed the body cam. She was calm. You attempted to detain an officer in her own driveway. Karen stammered. Well, the HOA rules don't override state law, ma'am. She was issued a citation for making a false report, and a trespass warning was placed against her for our property. But it got worse for Karen. At the next HOA meeting, which I finally attended for once, the entire board was abuzz. Word had spread. Apparently, this wasn't her first time trying to weaponize HOA policy on someone. She once called code enforcement on a disabled veteran for having a ramp she didn't like. Another time, she demanded a neighbor repaint their barn because it clashed with her aesthetic. Turns out she was on thin ice already. And after this incident made the rounds, a recall vote was scheduled. A month later, we showed up to the HOA meeting, which was packed like a courtroom. Neighbors, board members, even a city observer. Karen sat at the head of the table, smug as ever, until the chairperson took the floor. We're here to discuss the removal of Karen Whitmore as HOA president due to repeated abuse of power, harassment of residents, and a recent legal incident involving law enforcement. Karen tried to talk over him, claiming character assassination, but the vote went forward. 14 out of 17 residents voted to remove her. She stormed out, muttering about lawsuits and conspiracies. The new HOA president, a retired judge who immediately started revising the HOA handbook with real legal oversight. Karen still lives across the street, but now she keeps her mouth shut. My wife still parks wherever she wants on our land, and no one says a word. Funny how quickly things change when people find out the sheriff lives next door. So yeah, if you ever think about confronting someone over a petty HOA rule, maybe ask what they do for a living first. Because that driveway Karen thought she controlled, turns out it belonged to the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the county. And when you try to arrest the sheriff, you better pray she's in a good mood.